of the Attorney General.
Mr. Vice President, it is with great honor that I stand before this chamber today to present on the CARIFORUM Bill 2021. I thank you very much for the opportunity to do so. Mr. Vice President, I relish the opportunity to present on a bill that touches and concerns trade. Now, I had the opportunity of serving our great nation from 2016 to July 2020 on the board of directors at Export TT Limited. I must say, Mr. Vice President, this was one of the most valuable experiences of my entire life. Now, whilst I am no trade expert, I do believe, Mr. Vice President, that I do have institutional knowledge of trade and commerce based on my prior portfolio, which I held. Now, it is because of this experience and knowledge, I will say to Trinidad and Tobago that I am excited, that I am invigorated by the opportunities that this bill will bring to the manufacturing sector and service sector of our country. Now, Mr. Vice President, I respectfully submit that to truly understand the benefits that this bill can bring and the opportunities it presents for the penetration into the UK market, you have to sit and you have to speak with manufacturers, as I would have done during my tenure as a director on the board of directors of Export TT. Now, during my time at Export TT, I met so many manufacturers, especially the newly invented ones. I met people, Mr. Vice President, who invested lifelong savings and all of their time in following a dream. I saw personally mom and pop shops which evolved into money-making enterprises. I saw a woman from Tobago, for example, who made ready-to-bake cassava pone, which was a hit and which was ready to take on the export industry by storm. And all the time in which I served on Export TT, it was this PNM government that was in power. And I can speak, sitting on the board of directors as a previous director of Export TT, to all of the initiatives that our government did do, because Mr. Lyder, Senator Lyder, spoke about the past 5 years. I can speak from personal experience as a director on that board, the initiatives and the things that we would have done in order to assist the manufacturing sector of Trinidad and Tobago. So yes, Mr. Vice President, I will say I am overly excited by the great opportunities that this bill will bring to our manufacturing sector. Mr. Vice President, that being said, I will undertake to discuss this bill both from the lens of an attorney at law and also from the lens of a previous director sitting on the board of Export TT. Now, I know Senator Vieira made a very substantial point in his presentation. The Honorable Senator said, I believe the systems and policies in our region may be constraining our ability to export. Now, Mr. Vice President, during this Honorable Senator's presentation, I had an opportunity to pull the government's trade policy 2019 to 2023. And if I may respectfully put on the record, in that particular policy, there are many of the steps, that policy outlines many of the steps that the government is taking to have a proper handle on trade. So in answer to the Honorable Senator's queries or questions, in this policy document, the Ministry of Trade did identify constraints which need to be addressed and furthermore highlighted policy measures to be taken. For instance, one policy measure which personally struck out to me was that policy relative to reducing bureaucracy and red tape in trade, as illustrated in part 4.73 of that said trade policy document. So certainly, Mr. Vice President, we as a government, we acknowledge that there are hindrances to trade, but what we further recognize is that these hindrances are not static, that they are fluid in nature, and it requires us to tailor our policy position as we move along. And certainly, I can say that the Minister of Trade is doing a perfect job at that. Now, as I indicated to this honorable chamber, I will address this bill both from the lens of an attorney at law and also, and then later on I will speak from my experience as a director on the board of Export TT. Now, Senator John, in her presentation, Mr. Vice President, she spoke to the issue, she alluded to the fact that Trinidad and Tobago is a dualist state. And the honorable senator is indeed correct. Now, in order to look at the issue of dualism from a legalistic point of view, Mr. Vice President, I would want to examine, so I'm examining the bill I'm scrubbing the legislation from a legal perspective. We would have to look at the preamble of this particular bill. Now, when one looks at the preamble of the bill, which appears before us, for the listening public, the preamble of a bill, it really attests, or it goes to what the bill intends to do. It gives the information on that particular bill. Now, the last line of the preamble is what I particularly want to discuss. The last line says, and whereas it is necessary in order to give effect to the agreement to enact national legislation. Now, this particular part of the preamble is where the issue of dualism comes into being. Now, Mr. Vice President, Trinidad and Tobago, as we all know, is a dualist state. And for example, there was a case of Joseph and Boyce versus the Attorney General. It's a CCJ appeal case, CV number 2 of 2005. And this particular piece of legislation actually dealt with the concept of dualism. And in this particular case, Mr. Vice President, it stated inter alia that the classic view is that even if ratified by the executive, international treaties form no part of domestic law unless they have been specifically incorporated by the legislature. So this is just simply for the benefit of the viewing and listening public. As a government, we are here. Yes, there is an existing trade treaty, but we are here asking that this treaty, this international treaty, be incorporated into domestic law. And the reason for that is because Trinidad and Tobago, we are a dualist state, we are not a monostate. Monostates are states where, for example, as soon as an international treaty is ratified, it automatically forms a part of that country's legislation. We are very different than that. And hence, we are here as a government seeking the blessing of this most honorable chamber in order to incorporate this piece of legislation into domestic law to give this treaty full force and effect in our country. Now, I also want to address legally the issue of a memorandum of understanding so my brothers and sisters of the Senate can understand the necessity of the government and why the government has come to you asking your support, especially the independent senators, asking your support in the passage of this particular bill. The issue of the memorandum of understanding I speak to is the current trade agreement, as we all know, as it exists between the UK and Trinidad and Tobago, it is governed by a memorandum of understanding. And this memorandum of understanding was actually signed on the 9th of December 2020. As the Honorable Minister of Trade would have indicated in her presentation, it is due to expire on April 1st, 2021. Now, the issue with a memorandum of understanding, Mr. Vice President, is that one, the memorandum of understanding is due to expire, so simply we don't have time to stick. We have to move with haste in order to incorporate this treaty into domestic legislation. Secondly, there was a case, for example, an Australian case that case was Masters versus Cameron, 1954 91 CLR 353, and this is for the Hansard. As I said, it's an Australian case. And this case spoke to the effect of memorandums of understandings. And what it said, Mr. Vice President, is a memorandum of understanding is actually a precursor to an agreement. So a memorandum of understanding, one, it is entered into by parties on good faith, and it is really not legally binding because parties would have entered into it on good faith. Why does the law say that a memorandum of understanding is a precursor to agreement? What that simply means is that there's the expectation that when parties, and more so international countries, enter into memorandum of understanding in the not so distant future, what will follow is a legally binding agreement. And because currently our trade position in Trinidad and Tobago is governed by a memorandum of understanding, this we look at as a government, a responsible government, we look at simply as a precursor to an agreement. So by coming to the Parliament and by trying to legislate and have this bill passed, this is the agreement now that we will be relying upon to govern the parameters of trade and manufacturing as it relates to Trinidad and Tobago and our relationship with the United Kingdom. So, in my respectful submission, Mr. Vice President, the MOU which currently governs trade and industry between Trinidad and Tobago and the UK, it was a temporary legislative mechanism which would have catered for a temporary arrangement between Trinidad and Tobago. So if we're able today to successfully legislate, if we're able today to successfully pass this bill with the support of this honorable chamber, what we will be doing is creating a legal document now which binds our relationship with the UK, a legal arrangement which is more than and carries more weight than any MOU, any memorandum of understanding by virtue of law will carry. Now, Mr. Vice President, if I move on now to my second contribution, my second point and my contribution to this honorable House, I want to respectfully look at, Mr. Vice President, Clause 2 of the bill. And this clause is very, very important. This clause, Mr. Vice President, it must be cross-referenced for the benefit of the public. It must be cross-referenced with Clause 4.2 of the said bill, which is before this Parliament. Now, Clause 2, it speaks to the commencement clause of the bill, and in that particular clause, it lists numerous articles of the current EPA arrangement, and it says that the agreement shall come into effect on such a date as fixed by the President by proclamation. Now, why is this particular clause particularly important? Now, it's very important because, Mr. Vice President, this particular clause, it states that these particular articles, as I said before, will only come into effect on a date fixed by the President. That meaning that what this does is that it actually gives the government some time. It gives the government the time necessary in order to put certain legislative and certain administrative measures in place before these particular articles come into full force and effect. And I won't delve too long into this because I know the Honourable Minister spoke about the effect of these particular commencement clauses, in her presentation. Mr. Vice President, on a third note, I would respectfully briefly look at Clause 4.5, which deals with the issue of judicial notice. Now, judicial notice, why I respectfully believe is important, is because Section 4 of the Interpretation Act, Mr. Vice President, it states that every public act shall be judicially noticed unless the contrary is expressly provided. Now, 4.5 of this act, it states judicial notice shall be taken of the provisions of the agreement and any amendments made thereto as they are contained in the Act. And the question is, what does the judicial notice clause mean? And for the benefit of the public, this is simply where in this bill we are given and making recognition of the article, the EPA, bill, EPA agreement, that is supposed to be read in tandem with the bill that appears before us. So if you notice, the bill that appears before the Parliament, the bill that currently appears before the Parliament, there is not the EPA agreement. There's the 1,078 pages that we all speak about. That is not before us in a physical sense. Now, this judicial notice, by putting this particular clause in the bill that appears before us, it's where the court is now going to be required to pay cognizance to this particular agreement. Granted, it is not before the Parliament today. Now, Mr. Vice President, the EPA, for the record's sake, which has already been indicated by the Honourable Minister, it was published by Gazette, but because the agreement is not attached to the bill, it was very important by this judicial notice clause for us to make a reference to that particular document. Now, if I may respectfully, again for the benefit of the public, in explaining the concept of judicial notice, by providing for judicial notice in this bill, the court, as I said before, must recognize the agreement and recognize that once this bill is assented to, the agreement has full force and effect. Now, what exactly does this mean? Throughout the length and breadth, and especially for the benefit of the listening public, throughout the length and breadth of this debate, we may have heard the Honourable Minister cross-referencing the bill that is before us with the EPA arrangement. That's the CARIFORUM UK bill, agreement. That is a bill that this judicial notice recognizes. And by simply inserting that clause 4.5 in the bill that appears before us, this gives the minister the ability to rely upon and make reference to this particular bill, this particular trade agreement that exists. Now, Mr. Vice President, as I always do whenever I have the opportunity and the blessings to present in this house, I would look at a piece of legislation or I would look at a bill and I would usually speak to one of the clauses or the clauses that really reaches out to me and the clauses that I'm most fond of. And in this particular, in the CARIFORUM UK EPA 2021, that's the agreement, I must say that one of the clauses, one of the articles, and it's Article 202 to 206, this particular article in this agreement, it particularly speaks out to me because it speaks to dispute avoidance and settlement. It's what I call in my own terms the VEX clause of this agreement. I'm a litigator by nature, right? As a lawyer, you're naturally adversarial sometimes. But so I always ask myself when I look at an agreement, when we get vexed, what's going to happen? And this particular clause, these articles 202 to 206 is what I respectfully refer to as that vex clause because it guides us on what will happen or what can happen in the event that there is a breakup in the relationship or a fallout in the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and the United Kingdom. Now, Mr. Vice President, if I may respectfully submit, again, to my colleagues, Part 3 of the CARIFORUM UK EPA, this is where it speaks to these articles of dispute avoidance and settlement. Now, this particular clause, it states that where the parties, in this case the UK and Trinidad, may have failed to resolve the dispute by recourse to consultations as provided for in Article 204, or by recourse to mediation as provided for in Article 205, the complaining party may request the establishment of an arbitration panel. Now, Article 203 sets out that any dispute concerning the interpretation and application of this particular agreement shall be resolved through consultations, mediation, arbitration, or a mutually agreed solution. Now, why am I so fond of this particular clause? For attorneys at law, we are appreciative of arbitration, we are appreciative of mediation, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, because as a matter of fact, it's the way our courts are going, especially in commercial relationships. So the courts are actually directing persons towards ADR. And to see that this is the way in which this particular agreement speaks to how disputes will be resolved should there be a dispute between ourselves and Trinidad and between ourselves, and the United Kingdom. This is something I'm particularly fond about, and this is something I will certainly advocate for. Now, as we all know, with ADR, which is Alternative Dispute Resolution, there are many benefits to be had. We have a faster resolution of a problem, and more so in commercial relationships. ADR, as opposed to litigation, what you can have is at the end of a dispute being resolved, you can still manage. To a great extent to preserve the relationship that exists between the parties. So that being said, these particular articles in the CARIFORUM EPA, which is 202 to 206, in my own words, the VEX clause, is something I'm particularly fond of. As a matter of fact, it took me back to my days in law school, sitting down in the class of Justice of Appeal Kokaram's class. And Justice Corcoran, if anybody is familiar with the Honorable Judge, he would always preach and he will always advocate for settling matters via alternative dispute resolution. So this particular clause is one of the many very reasons, again, why I'm in full support of this particular bill, which appears before this honorable parliament today. Now, finally, Mr. Vice President, so these were the legal issues that I had hoped that I intended to address as it relates to the bill. Now I want to just respectfully, in a few minutes, deal with some of the averments made by Senator Leiter. Now, Senator Leiter spoke about our government's failure to prepare the manufacturing sector. He said that we forsake the micro and medium enterprises. And this is something that this placed on the record, it has to be corrected. And I can speak because I'm not speaking from the lens of a politician now. And I'm not speaking from the lens of a minister of government. I'm speaking from the lens of having sat in the trenches as a director on the board of directors of Export TT and having worked personally with exporters in this country, having worked personally with this honorable minister of trade and industry. And I have no difficulty with the record reflecting of the admiration I had as a young director, newly minted director, sitting on this board with very little trade experience, looking on at the honorable minister, looking on at the extent to which she works to drive trade and industry in this country. So to sit down here and listen to Mr. Leiter talk about this government not doing anything for micro and medium enterprises, it's absolutely untruthful, because I would have experienced it myself, sitting and having the opportunity to work with the honorable minister when I was a director of Export TT. Now, Mr. Vice President, if I may respectfully say, and I want the record to reflect this. I recall when we, as a director on Export TT, I personally had the privilege and the blessing to lead several trade missions to different countries of this world. I led a trade mission to Guyana, to Canada, to Latin America, and Cuba, which I attended with the honorable minister. And I would say that having been exposed to these missions, I was exposed to the great possibilities that exist for manufacturers and service sectors outside of our shores, especially when there is an existing trade agreement that you can tap into. So trade missions, in other words, from my experience as the director of Export TT, it carries more value and carries more weight when you enter into a market and there's already an existing contractual or legal agreement that you could tap into. And as I said, I would have experienced that when I would have taken manufacturers, small to medium, to micro to medium, the same manufacturers that Mr. Leiter is alluding that this government has ignored and neglected. These are the same manufacturers that I had the privilege of leading to Guyana, to Cuba, to Latin America, and I would have experienced the work that we did as a government in order to assist these manufacturers in making their business ready to take on an international market. Mr. Vice President, I also distinctly recall I was not a part of Fit for Europe because I had only received my instrument of appointment at the end of 2016 and the mission was completed. But I had the benefit of sitting in that graduation ceremony where manufacturers came. And when I speak of manufacturers, I'm not talking about the manufacturers. It's the same micro to medium manufacturers Mr. Leiter has said we neglected. These manufacturers were giving testimonials as to how great this initiative was and how pleased and how happy they were that this was an initiative by Export TT but supported by the Ministry of Trade and Industry. I will never forget, there was one testimonial, it's Rachel Rochford, and she was from Red Fire Innovations. And Rachel said things to the effect that I am grateful and will forever be grateful to the Ministry of Trade and Industry. She said I would have never fully recognized the need for her line of products. So she was involved in, I think, batiks and those things. And she said I would have never recognized the need and the market outside there for my products unless I had personally visited. And she was grateful that Export TT, led by the Ministry of Trade and Industry, took the time to take her to this mission. One thing I have to also address is the issue of Tobago, because Tobago is always very dear to my heart. I remember when, again, and the minister could allude to that.
Minister, you have 5 more minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. And the minister can allude to that. On that very said day, we received our instrument of appointment. This honorable minister said to us, do not forget Tobago. Irrespective of what you do as a board, do not forget the development of Tobago. That I took very, very close to my heart, supported by a son of the soil, Dr. Cyril Collier. I will never forget that. And with the blessings of this honorable minister, what we did is started the Tobago Development Program for mom and pop shops in Tobago, preparing them with the skills that was necessary for them to take on the export market. I want the record to reflect that we also had the full support of Ms. Marcelin Jack and Mr. Joel Jack, who made it possible, the THA made it possible for us as the board of directors to go into Tobago and do some considerable work. We had a cohort of almost 15 mom and pop type businesses that we personally, and this was always my modus operandi, Mr. Vice President. As a board, we had to be prepared to look outside the box and think outside the box and do whatever it took to help our manufacturers in Tobago. And what I can say, it was a policy and a principle that was always supported by this Minister of Trade and Industry. And whenever we went to her with bright eyes, especially me with my bright eyes, bright ideas, this Minister of Trade and Industry always supported us and gave us the funding and made it the possibilities available to us to even help our brothers and sisters and the manufacturing sector in Tobago. So therefore, I may sound very emotional, but I take it very personally when statements are made that we have ignored the micro business sector, because I was a part of the process, having served on the board of Export TT, seeing the kind of work that this government has done and continues to do in order to promote business and manufacturing industry in this country. So, Mr. Vice President, with this being said, I want to reiterate to Trinidad and Tobago the words by the Honorable Senator, the Honorable Minister of Industry, of Energy, Mr. Franklin Khan, when he said to our country, let us not underestimate our abilities to succeed as a small nation. He said that and it raised every pore on my skin. And I will repeat for the record and for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago, let us not underestimate our ability to succeed as a small nation, because we can do it. With a PNM government, we will do it. And with this bill, it will certainly provide the avenues for us to assist our manufacturers and take them to the place that we want them to be. With that being said, I thank you for the opportunity.
Senator Mark.